So it is pretty well documented that I am a bit of a Sega fanboy. I of course grew up with the Sega Genesis, and I absolutely love Sega related products. It's just sort of ingrained in me at this point. I mean, I even wrote a book on the Sega 32X because that's what people want to read, a book about the Sega 32X. But if you haven't read it yet, be sure to check it out on Amazon, link in the description box down below. But yes, whenever Sega teases announcements and things related to that, I get excited, and then most of the time I'm let down. But of course, a few days ago on the channel, we talked about a new Sega announcement that actually involved Sega, but wasn't being announced by Sega themselves. It was being done by a journalist in Japan, and he was putting this announcement on par with Wired revealing the PlayStation 5. So everyone lost their minds. There was all sorts of rumors floating around out there about what this announcement was going to be. We covered it pretty in-depth in the video that we made on Sunday, but I was definitely very excited for it. This announcement was of course being parlayed on June 3rd, which also coincides with Sega's 60th anniversary. Well, last night we got some interesting announcements out of Japan. We got the big surprise announcement, and many people are relating this to what Sega also announced, but they're actually two different things. You see, Sega also made a big announcement that has the whole video game industry wondering, what are they doing? And that big announcement was a Game Gear Micro. Now, if the Game Gear Micro was not the big announcement, what was the actual big announcement that was on par with the PlayStation 5? We're going to talk about both of these things in this video. So sit back, relax, make sure you subscribe to the channel if you haven't yet, and let's talk about what's going on with Sega because, well, it's just a rabbit hole right now. So yes, folks, you heard that right. Sega is releasing a Game Gear Micro, another classic system. Of course, we've seen a bunch of different classic systems, the NES Classic, the SNES Classic, the PlayStation Classic, which of course kind of sucked, but then recently we even got the Sega Genesis Mini, which was really a great system, I thought. I really liked the build quality of it. I thought the game variety on it was very solid as well. It was just a really well done classic system. So when Sega announced that they are doing a Game Gear Micro, I got very excited. Look, the Game Gear is a very underrated system. Yes, it kind of sucked when you played it back in the day. I remember when I got mine back in the day. I actually got it for a birthday gift, and this birthday was being held at a cabin in the mountains because I don't really know why we had it there. I'm not big on outdoors. There was no air conditioning. It was hot as hell in there as well. But yes, I got a Sega Game Gear that came bundled in with Sonic the Hedgehog 2, but there was a problem. We needed batteries, so we went to the little crappy mountain store at the bottom of the mountain to get batteries. Did they have Duracell? Did they have Energizer? No, they had Everready with the stupid little cat on them. So I got to play my Sega Game Gear for about 30 minutes until these 6 AA batteries wore out on it. Then I of course got an AC adapter for it, but I really like the Sega Game Gear library of games, and it's actually something I've talked about previously on this channel, especially when you're talking about third-party games, because a lot of those games were ports of Master System games that released exclusively in Europe because of licensing that the NES had when it came to third-party games in the States. When you look at third-party games on the Master System or Game Gear in this situation, such as Batman Returns, Jurassic Park, Aladdin, there's so many good games that people just didn't play because it wasn't available on the Master System, and the Game Gear was just sort of a more expensive system than the Game Boy was. So a Game Gear Micro sounds awesome. There's a lot of great games for the Game Gear and a lot of stuff you can do, but Sega just, I don't know what they did. I don't know what they did with this, because let's just go over what the Sega Game Gear Micro is actually about. So it will be coming to Japan on October 4th, and you can see that this is a micro system, and when we say micro, it's very small. The screen is about 1.5 inches tall, and it looks like something you will lose in like 5 minutes. Like, do you slip it in your pocket or something like this? This thing just looks way too freaking small. I'm not sure who this is being marketed for. Obviously the Sega diehard idiot like myself is going to buy one of these, but really it's just a bizarre choice to make this system so small. I get that it's a micro, but you could have made it so that, I don't know, an adult could actually hold it. Now the system will be releasing in 4 different colors, but the colors aren't the classic colors that we saw with various Sega Game Gears throughout the years. One of the colors is black, which of course is what the Sega Game Gear came out as, but of course there was that nice blue system, there was a red system as well, some different variants for the system, but these other 3 colors just seem to be all new colors. Now each console will retail for about $46 US in Japan, convert that to yen. There's no real word if this will be releasing stateside as well, but if it does release stateside, I think there's going to be some problems with it, because each system has its own library of games. Yes, so there's not a whole spread across the board when it comes to the Sega Game Gear Micro as far as the games you get on the system. If you buy the black one, you get certain games on that system. If you buy the yellow one, you get certain games on that system. So let's talk about how many games are on these systems each. You got to remember, this is $46, roughly $50 for each one of these systems. You get 4 games. 4 games! 4 games! Are you out of your mind? Have you lost all sanity with this? And I had some people say, well, it's a small system. What do you expect? Do you know how big a micro SD card is? A micro SD card is very, very small. You could fit a ton of games on a micro SD card, which would fit into this system. But Sega is releasing this with 4 games on each system. So let's go over the game library, shall we? The black system has Sonic the Hedgehog on it, Puyo Puyo 2, Outrun, and Royal Stone. The baby blue system has Sonic and Tails, Gunstar Heroes, Sylvan Tale, and Baku Baku Animal. The yellow system is for RPG fans. It has Shining Force Gaiden, Shining Force Gaiden 2, Shining Force Gaiden Final Conflict, and Nazo Puyo Aro no Rooks. I probably said that completely wrong. You have Megami Tensei Gaiden Last Bible, Megami Tensei Gaiden Last Bible Special, the Game Gear Shinobi, and Columns. How are you supposed to play an RPG on this system? Like, really, you gotta remember, this was before voice acting in video games, so you're going to have to be reading text on these games. And on a 1.5-inch screen, I don't really see how you are going to be able to read text on these things, because it's absolutely ridiculous. But Sega has an answer for that. A bigger screen? No, a magnifying glass for it. And I'm being dead ass serious. This is something that is releasing alongside of the Sega Game Gear Micro in order to be able to see the screen properly. You will need this magnifying glass in order to see things. How is this a good idea? How is this a good idea? 4 games? 4 games and I need a magnifying glass in order to see these games, and you're charging roughly $50, and you have to, of course, you know, have all the systems in order to play all the games. It's just absolutely ridiculous. Now, one thing that they did improve upon that I do have to give them at least some sort of kudos for is the fact that you no longer need 6 AA batteries, you only need 3 AAA batteries. There is no word on how long the battery life of this system will last, and it does have a micro USB slot on it as well, so that you can use, you know, an external power device in order to charge the system up. I don't know if there's an internal battery that will charge on this, but if you're in a pinch and you're at home or something and you want to play this for some strange reason, you can just plug it into a wall socket, and it does have one built-in speaker and a headphone jack. Now, one good thing about this system that I do have to say is the emulation on it. It has been confirmed that M2 is handling the emulation on this system, and of course M2 is pretty much known as a port powerhouse when it comes to emulation things. They've done great things on the Sega Ages collection on the Nintendo Switch. They did the TurboGrafx 16 mini, they did the Sega Genesis mini. I have no problems with M2 being the port machine behind this thing. It's much better than AT Games or At Games, whatever. I'll never learn their name because they're not worth learning their name. However, the problem with this system is you are charging people $50 roughly for 4 games each system. So in order to play all 16 games, you have to spend roughly $200, and that's not even including shipping on these things, because there's no word if this is going to be released outside of Japan. And if you want to pre-order these because you're a weirdo like me, guess what? All the pre-orders are already sold out. They literally sold out within minutes. So obviously there's people out there that want this. There are people out there that want the Sega Game Gear Micro, and honestly, I am one of those people, but I definitely think this is a terrible value at the end of the day, because there's only 4 games per system. Where are all the awesome third-party games? Like, yeah, there's Gunstar Heroes and Megami Tensei, but where are the cool platformers and stuff like that? There's so many awesome Game Gear games that are just stuck either on the Game Gear or on the Master System in Europe that you could have picked and choose from. You obviously have some sort of working relationship with Disney in order to get some of the games that you got on the Sega Genesis Mini. Why couldn't you expand upon that more? When you look at all the other mini systems, there has so much value compared to what you're getting with the Game Gear Micro. I just don't foresee this being a huge success. I think diehard collectors like myself and other Sega people out there will want to get their hands on this, but as far as massive success is concerned, it just seems like a very strange decision. But like I said, this was not the big announcement, folks. No, no, no. The Sega Game Gear Micro was not the announcement that was on par with the PlayStation 5, and it's much bigger than that. I guess, I don't know, man. It was like, you know how, like, if you're in a crowded room and you fart and it's like really loud, and then everyone gets quiet because they're like, all right, who farted? Like, who's the ass who did that? Like, this is how I felt about this announcement, because, drum roll please, cloud gaming is dead. We are now looking towards Sega Fog Gaming. Fog gaming, because I guess the cloud isn't enough. We need the fog in the sky in order to talk about this. So what is fog gaming? How is this going to revolutionize and just rile up the video game industry? And why is this such a big announcement that's on par with the PlayStation 5? Well, essentially, you'll be able to basically do sort of almost like a cloud-like service for Japanese arcade games if you live in Japan, meaning that if the arcade is near you is closed and you want to play a Sega arcade game, you can essentially play it at home, which is kind of defeating the point of going to an arcade, because I feel like an arcade is more of an experience. They're basically going to touting things like ultra low latency. There's going to be CPUs and GPUs basically housed in arcade machines, and that will allow you to play these games at home. So really, we're putting fog gaming on the same level as the PlayStation 5. A system reveal on the same level of something like fog gaming, which I guess it's kind of neat. You know, it's neat. I don't see this riling up the video game industry. I don't see this revolutionizing the video game industry. Essentially, it's just allowing you to play arcade games at home when the arcade is closed, which is good for arcade diehard fans in Japan and stuff like that. But really, you're putting this on the same level as the PlayStation 5. Like, you should have just kept your mouth shut. You should have said, oh, well, you know what, I have a pretty cool thing coming to us in an exclusive Famitsu feature, and it's pretty neat. You know, I would say neat. I wouldn't say this is revolutionary. I wouldn't say this is going to rile up the video game industry. And it's just yet another disappointment related to something Sega. It's like Sega fans have wanted so much awesome stuff. All of the stuff I talked about in the video on Sunday was stuff that I had actually heard from multiple sources. So I wasn't really speculating all that much on some of the things. That was what a lot of industry people were talking about that they had heard could potentially be the announcement. And then to get this, fog gaming, to get this instead of something like, I don't know, Sega teaming up with Microsoft to do the Xbox Series X in Japan under Sega branding, that's revolutionary. That would rile up the video game industry. Sega Forever coming to home consoles, that's revolutionary. That would rile up the video game industry. Essentially a Sega Netflix service for your home console. That's unlike anything that we have ever seen before from a third-party company. But no, fog gaming. Beware the fog. Like, I don't know, man. I still love Sega. If I can get my hands on the Game Gear Micro, I'm going to buy, I don't know, like at least one of them. I'll probably just get the black one because, you know, it's got Sonic and Outrun on it. But still, definitely disappointing stuff here. To kick off Sega's 60th anniversary, I was hoping for something a little more exciting, a little something, I don't know, that would rile up the video game industry and be revolutionary. But instead, we got a Game Gear Micro that only has 4 games on it for roughly $50. If you want to play all 16 games, you got to spend about $200, which really at that point you're better off just buying an old Game Gear and fog gaming. So yeah. I really don't have anything else to say to this, so we're just gonna wrap up this video. Let me know what you think of this stuff in the comment section down below. Are you a bit disappointed like I am? Do you want to get your grimy hands on a Game Gear Micro that's like this freaking big? And of course, what do you think about fog gaming? Is fog gaming the future? I mean, I'm still waiting for cloud gaming to sort of be the future of video games, but hey, now we have a fog to go along with the cloud. And as always, folks, thank you for checking out this video. If you're new to the channel, make sure you subscribe and turn on notifications. Check out other videos on the channel, and as always, I'll catch you guys on the next one. Later.